So we're going to talk for about 15 minutes about independent media and life on the internet. We have a group of panelists here who will give a little context about what they do as I talk to them. But I think maybe the interesting place to start is we're in a moment now in the last year where massive media conglomerates like News Corp investing in Vice, or venture capitalists throwing money at Fox, or ESPN throwing money at Nate Silver, have kind of flooded in and started to spend money on what was previously a lot of independent digital media talent. At the point at which the kind of mainstream and the kind of money is waking up to the value of digital journalism, what's the value, Ryan, of Pitchfork being quote unquote independent media company that has kind of always maintained at a certain level for a certain period of time?
Yeah, I think that we are. I think the freedom of experimenting with sort of new forms of media and ways of presenting content is something that matters a lot to us. And we've been experimenting a lot with different types of layouts and kind of creating something that feels like print but operates like the web. There's animations, there are and the content is really like full bleed as well. So
it's like the Janelle Monáe kind of
right, yeah. We call them cover stories, and we also have another section called Pitchfork Advanced, which streams albums with the actual artwork and also some video in there as well. And so these are things that we'll launch these and with the intent of kind of presenting this new form. And initially, because we want the feature and the style to speak for itself, we generally, in many cases, don't actually have sponsors attached to them. It kind of frees us up to do things completely creatively. That's purely about the layout and about the feature and the writing. So that's one of the ways in which it's separate. But I think
how can you afford to do that if you don't have these big bankrolling kind of entities?
Well, I mean, there are ads for a lot of the rest of the site. There are sponsors for other types of content. So, in the event that we want to experiment with something different, and figure out that piece of it later, that's generally just how we do it. So.
And give us some context. Pitchfork has been around for a long enough time that it's a kind of established business. It's no longer in a startup mode. But may not be known to everyone who's not kind of a certain demo or of the internet. Give us some context about the size of the audience and the business and what you guys have done.
Well, we're about 5 million uniques per month, and I think really the thing that we do, we're independent music media, and so the types of things that we do are news and features and those types of things. But it's I think we're really fostering sort of a lot of independent voices, and to the kind of the point of the panel, I think that one thing that we have is a lot of different sort of writers who specialize in different kinds of areas, and so I think that they all increasingly each writer has kind of their own kind of independent voice and following. So.
Ryan, over the years, is it increasing the number of people who try to buy Pitchfork, or is it decreasing?
It's about steady. We've actually never taken any venture capital, any kind of funding. It's always been 100% independent. I mean, I had kind of a head start. I started Pitchfork in 1995. There was nothing else music related, or barely anything else online. So when we've been able to kind of grow steadily and just kind of build it up ourselves, and it's nice to not. It's really refreshing to not have to answer to anyone else about what we do and what we want.
So Corey, how many people have offered to buy the All this week?
This week, 0.
I'll buy it.
It's Tuesday. Let's do business. You would be an ideal owner. Sure. We in as many ways we are similar to Pitchfork in a little way. We are independently owned. We're 5 years old. We run about 4 websites right now, and we did it because we wanted to be independent media. We had worked for large companies like Gawker. We had worked for a number of these other places that are obsessed with growth and an eventual payday, essentially. And we didn't want to be like that, so we wanted to start a company where ownership is distributed. So pretty much everyone who works with us either owns the website they conduct, owns a part of the company, or some combination thereof. Yeah.
How's it going?
It's going well. We don't want to grow too big. Like 5 million readers a month is a wonderful size.
Sure.
Like that's a great audience, both in terms of knowing how to address an audience, and it's a great audience in terms of advertising and marketing too, because you can say like, here's this group of people and here's what we know about them. They are X, Y, and Z, and when you start to scale up, as all these companies do now who have 30 million, 40 million in investment money, your audience is this diffuse, massive thing that seems difficult to sell unless you're kind of in the Super Bowl ad industry.
And what you guys do seems kind of intentionally diverse and like freewheeling at some level. Is that something that
Freewheeling.
Well,
yeah, no, I think that's right. Well, I don't think we
freelancers doing a lot of different things, a lot of which is experimental, is written with a kind of style that you wouldn't necessarily see in some sort of mainstream publication.
There haven't been a lot of places, and I'd actually like to hear you talk about this, Maureen, for people to start writing. Like it's a very difficult climate. The fact that there's all these jobs right now, which is the upside of the venture capital boom, right, is that people have jobs, which is great, and they get to write and learn. But there's no place where people can go to an editor and say like, I'm kind of a rookie, like I want to do this, like how do I get there? And they go off and become writers and get real jobs and graduate, which is good.
Right. So you're kind of outside of this in the sense that you write books for a living.
I do.
And yet the internet and kind of life on the internet has become a big part of your career at some level and a part of your daily life. Give us some context about that and how the kind of two relate.
Well, I'm a YA writer, and that is my main profession, but I'd say I probably spend about half my day online, and that is a key component of what I do, but it sort of has no relationship to what I do. I sort of write whatever I want, because while I work with a publishing company, I don't work for one. So I'm this uncontrollable little weirdo running the world, running around, putting up whatever she wants, and I kind of see that as my own personal space very much. And I think more and more readers are expecting a certain amount of contact, that if you're out, that they should be able to read something and then ask you about it. I think that's more and more of an expectation.
Right.
And I think it's more and more of a writer's job anymore, and some people are comfortable with it and some people aren't. It shouldn't certainly be forced on anybody, but I think when it is forced on people, you can tell.
Right, but you got
they have that kind of white look around the eyes, kind of.
But you have now a huge footprint on Twitter and other kind of platforms. And you said before to me that it was kind of by accident, by just doing stuff that was fun to you. Did you just luck into that?
I think people can tell. I think it's that simple. That's why they
can tell that you're doing
your
it for
sites
fun.
work, because there's stuff there. I think you have one obligation, and that's to be interesting and to put up stuff people want to read. And if you fail that obligation, then you fail. Nobody is obligated to read you under any circumstances. And if you just sort of talk about what you do, that's super boring. Why does anybody care? No one cares you have a book out, except your mom. Your mom may not even care. I don't know your mom. So.
But you said before that, as you're just getting at, a lot of publishing houses now want writers to have the kind of, want authors to have the kind of footprint or try to impose on them, you should be tweeting or you should
There's an expectation, yeah.
And so does that become a benefit when you're selling a book, that your agent can say, well, look,
I suppose so. I think it depends on how well it goes. I think that when you're first starting out, there's really no reason. If you're a debut author, there's absolutely no reason why anybody should follow you. You can't just be like, follow me. If I went up to you in the street and you were like, follow me, I'd be like, no, I don't know you. So you have to have something to show people, that you have to have something else to say, I think, besides your book, because, again, there's a lot of books and no one really cares.
And how much of the time that you're spending online are you talking to people who are readers of your books, or a kind of independent other community of people that are organizing and talking to each other about other things?
A lot of people who follow me online, if you're watching, I don't know where you are, but they didn't know I was a writer. They didn't know I wrote books. They're like, oh, you write books? When'd you start doing that? So I think it's very much a mix. You can get anybody.
And how do you guys think about, I mean, we talked before about one of the challenges at Pitchfork is the accessibility to individual writers and balancing that against the fact that as a kind of music reviews site, a lot of people will remove the individual writer from it and say Pitchfork says.
Yeah, this is Pitchfork approved, or
your writers have a relationship to their readers versus how the,
Well, actually, increasingly, and I think this is, an element of social media, is that, a lot of the writers have become well established in their own right on the site. A lot of our writers tend to stay with Pitchfork for a very long time and become established in their own right as names. And so you have people, following them and checking them on Twitter and going to war with them over things that they say. And I think that what's interesting about that, you have like people who, I think their opinions are, they're strictly their own, and yet people will take something as, as being, a Pitchfork endorsed, Pitchfork as a whole hates this, or Pitchfork as a whole likes this. And so, and I think that's something that probably most critics deal with at any publication, but specifically at Pitchfork, there's, this sort of idea of a hive mind, which is really sort of non-existent. But I think, the things that we look for are for, for people to, I think, well, essentially that, that our writers do make these connections that are like very personal with people, and often,
So how then can they have the kind of, honesty and straightforwardness and intimacy that, Maureen has with people on the web, while they're also a part of a kind of broader Pitchfork voice or sensibility?
Yeah, I mean, the intimacy, it really does come from their own perspectives. I mean, where a critic is coming from, and their tastes and what their sort of areas of specialty are kind of, that, and also like their writing style obviously are where they draw their personality from. But yeah, they make these kind of.
So Corey, do people say the all endorses X, Y, or Z, and would that ever make sense?
We're a little less unified in terms of writers. We want them to be a little more crazy and less sort of voice of the house in the sort of old school newspaper style. But like for example, there's a guy you probably know, David Shapiro, who was Pitchfork reviews.
Yeah.
Pitchfork was so famous that there was a guy who started a website that was about Pitchfork, who is now publishing a book on Amazon. Like he actually made that way.
About
it is a book about the forming of the blog and that time. It's actually pretty fascinating.
Yeah,
You'll like
yeah.
it. But he is an incredible. He's a writer who could never be subsumed into a publication. Like if he went to work for the Times or the New Yorker, he could never be hammered down into sounding like that.
And you want him to.
And that's what you want people to be. You want people
Absolutely.
to flower into their flowerness. What? Help.
And it's the more flowery it is, the more traffic it gets, or do you guys not care?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I don't think that is true.
Yeah, I don't think it is true.
Yeah.
I've never done the cross analysis. I have to make a flowery matrix.
Gotta get the all data scientist on it.
Yeah.
So what about the downsides of all of the accessibility and the connectedness and the intimacy that you have? Maureen, is there a backlash? Are there trolls that?
Oh, there are always trolls.
Oh yeah.
There are always trolls, and they vary in their degree of trolliness. And don't
What's
ever.
the spectrum of trolliness?
Don't go down. Well, it gets bad. I mean, it comes from just with the random person who tells you to, jump off a cliff and die, and then they get the nasty ones. So it really can get very bad. Fortunately, I think that is it's a very, very small percentage. When it happens, it can kind of ruin your day. And you just, I think, have to try not to. It's a part of the new behavior code is how much do you let it get to you? And you have to sort
build
of
up a
make
new thick
choice.
skin.
Absolutely.
And how do you let it? How do you make it not get to you?
You go and you sit in the dark and cry a lot. And then you eat some Pringles, and yeah, that's usually that works usually.
Corey, do you have a steady supply of Pringles?
I do. I eat a lot of Pringles, and I have after being on the internet for 15 years, my skin is pretty much
Having no feelings is good.
I'm dead inside.
Yeah, so me too.
It's hard. I actually have been upset on the internet this year, though. It's actually, my thick skin is not even enough for this internet now.
It's rough out there.
Is it worse than it has been?
I think the it's a moving, front line a little bit, that the expectations are shifting a little bit more from there should be change to there must be change today, and you must make it, and you should have made it 10 minutes ago, and now I hate you.
From fans to
So
enemies.
we're out of time, but I have one last question. So as a result of all this, despite all of the success and all of the wonderfulness of it, will there be a point in which any of the three of you feel like you need to move to a cabin in Vermont and detach from it all?
That's more, leave that to the singer-songwriters. Intimate acoustic.
You'll just cover the people who are doing that.
That's exactly right.
What about you guys?
Nature makes me nervous, so I don't know.
I think Vermont's too cold.
Yeah.
But you'll go world traveling,
I will
maybe?
find a desert somewhere. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're not going to be on the internet's sort of like New York in that if you're not in New York City to take advantage of it, to mine its natural resources in the pursuit of capitalism, like don't be here because it's too terrible otherwise. Like just leave. So, and I kind of feel like that way about the internet now.
That's a life-affirming sentiment.
It's so dark. I'm so sorry, but like I'm dead inside. But
I get it.
But the internet's a little bit like that now. Although there's places of play which I really like, and I want to preserve those.
That seems like a good place to wrap up. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.